Hi guys, so today's video is going to be another requested topic, which is how to prepare for the dietitian exam. Now I'm going to be covering the Canadian dietitian exam as well. I have previously passed the American one before, so I will be talking a little bit about that as well. So before we dive into the tips, let's just go through a brief overview of the two exams compared together. But do know that the tips following will be relevant for both exams. So for the Canadian dietitian exam, which is the CDRE, it's a computer-based 4-hour, 185 multiple question exam with passage-based questions related to a case, as well as just simple independent questions. The exam will be divided into two 2-hour segments with a 15-minute break in between. Now I've linked the preparation guide in the description box down below, so really make sure to check that out. As for the American exam, the CDR exam, it's also computer-based, but it's 3 hours, also multiple choice, but this one is of variable length. It has a minimum of 125 questions, but if it has not concluded whether or not you are proficient or not after answering those questions, the maximum number of questions is actually 145. I have linked the study guide down below in the description box as well. This one is not free like the Canadian one though. Tip number 1. How should you approach the exam? The Canadian one is really based on the competencies and the performance indicators of those competencies. If you check out the exam blueprint on the Canadian prep guide, you'll notice what percentage of questions is going to come from each competency. There are 5 in total, and also which performance indicators in those competencies that they'll test you on at least once. I highly recommend that you go through and review what these indicators are in addition to the other dietetics info that you have to know. Because they're basing these questions on the performance indicators, it basically means that you need to know what the question is asking you and avoid all the distractor answers. For example, and of course you can find this on the prep guide as well, take this question. An objective of a high school nutrition program is to increase the daily consumption of vegetables and fruit. Which tool will the dietitian use to assess behavior change? So the competency that this covers is within population and health, and the performance indicator demonstrate knowledge of processes and outcomes used to evaluate the effectiveness of population health activities. So by reading the question, the main thing that you'll notice is probably assess behavior change. Now, if you look at the different options that you have, the food frequency questionnaire really just looks at someone's daily eating habits, but does not necessarily assess any behavior changes. The 3-day food record, again, kind of looks at an individual's eating habits, does not assess behavior change. The focus groups typically are a way to get some feedback on a program. Again, not really used to assess any sort of behavior change. But the pre and post program questionnaire really allows you to get to know the high school students' fruit and vegetable consumption before the nutrition program and also after. So this can more accurately be used to assess behavior change, and basically lets you know if the goals of the program have been achieved. For the American exam, their questions are going to be based on several domains. Principles of dietetics domain, nutrition care for individuals and groups, management of food and nutrition programs and services, food service systems. The prep guide for the American exam that I was talking about, it does include a long list of topics that can help you to prepare and gather all the information that you'll likely need. However, it is important to know that the questions are not based on these topics, and of course, these are not comprehensive. For example, this topic right here, the nutrient, energy needs, and feeding patterns throughout the lifespan, can cover pediatrics, young children, young adults, pregnancy, postpartum, menopause and postmenopause, and of course healthy aging, which these topics in and of themselves can include a lot of different subtopics. The American exam, I find, is less about the performance indicators and more about just a simple knowledge question, or are they asking you about a certain process? It could also be giving you information but asking you to apply that knowledge or analyze and conclude something. Tip number 2 is to stay focused, to study effectively. Basically, for each exam, what I did was I took a look at the list of topics. I basically gathered all my notes that I had on each of those topics to study them. But in order for me to actually remember those things that I have compiled, I needed a way for myself to really get focused and successfully absorb all the material. Over the years of studies, I've figured out that I tend to study better and retain information better if I write things down. My focus is not really the best, so if I am simply just reading the notes off of somewhere, nothing really gets retained, just finding myself reading it over and over and over again without really understanding or without memorizing anything. I'm gonna get bored, I'm gonna get tired, I am definitely going to get distracted. But if I am taking the time to read something in order to rewrite the same thing, then that really forces me to pay more attention to it. And it also gives me the chance to basically read over the same thing twice. Typing really works for me too. So you go ahead and do whatever is best for you. There will always be several different areas that I cannot successfully absorb into my brain at that point in time. So what I do is I highlight those statements, I transfer them, and I rewrite or retype them, and then basically create a whole new set of study notes. And I do that over and over and over again until I have successfully managed to remember the majority of what I need to know. And at the end of the day, I'm going to have maybe a page or two of very concise notes. Tip number 3 is to make sure that you are practicing. You need to do as many practice exams as you possibly can find. For the Canadian version of the study guide, it actually lists out explanations on the answers on why they're right or wrong. So you need to go over those answers and those explanations to make sure that you're understanding why you got something wrong, but also understanding why you got something right, and if you were thinking along the same wavelengths as the creators of this exam. For the American exam, I have listed some sources also in the description box down below. The main resource being the Gene Inman resource package. Now, I was fortunately enough to pass the American exam without using the Gene Inman. So what I did was I just used the topics in the study guide and did some other research by myself. But I don't deny the incredible usefulness of the Gene Inman resources, one that most individuals do use and do use successfully to pass. In addition, the Gene Inman resources are a bit more specific. The American Study Guide, it's more generalized. The questions are not based on the topics, and the topics are not comprehensive. I will also link down below in the description box the different questions of Gene Inman based on the domain that you can see on Quizlet. So go ahead and check those out. Tip number 4 is to stay in tip-top condition while you're studying for the exam. Number 1, eat well. You know this, you got this, you studied this. You will now know what your future patients and future clients are going through when they tell you, I really can't do this, I can't fit healthy eating into my busy schedule. So at the very least, you can pick up some tips for them because you will be going through that yourself. Number 2 is sleeping well. No doubt by now you have already discovered how many hours you need to, optimize your energy levels and attention and focus. So please do try and get that. And please do not pull an all-nighter because you run the risk of being very tired and potentially forget some crucial information that you've known all this time. You don't want to risk that because you want to be maximizing the knowledge that you do know. Number 3 is to really relieve stress, and you will have your own way of doing this. It could be hanging out with friends or family, hanging out with your pet, exercising regularly. It could be listening to music, playing video games, meditation, or watching movies. And number 4, of course, since it's a computer-based exam, if you will be using your own computer, then for sure test your connection. Make sure that you are going to have an available room to yourself with no distraction, no noise, and making sure that you are setting up your space beforehand to exactly how the exam instructs you to. Tip number 5, do ensure that you will continue to have the quiet empty space to yourself for the entire duration of the exam. No siblings bringing their friends over, no parents on the phone. Make sure your phone is on silent or off and away from you. If you're using your computer, make sure that it's disconnected from incoming messages or emails, making sure that your computer is plugged in so you don't have any sort of charging emergencies happening. During the actual exam, do take time to read the question. I tend to be very anxious and nervous. I read the question really quick thinking, oh, I'm going to save time. But what happens in the end is that I just don't take the question in at all. And I need to reread the question several times before I can actually answer. So that ended up being a waste of time. Now, the American exam doesn't really have any sort of breaks, but the Canadian exam does have a 15-minute break. So I really encourage you to take those 15 minutes, go to the washroom, have a drink, have a snack, just take a breather and make sure that you are all ready to take that second portion. I know you guys are working so hard to prepare yourselves for this exam, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy, but it's 100% doable. And I have so much confidence in your knowledge, in your skills, and in the time and effort that you've put into your preparations. And I hope to interact with you as full-fledged dietitians in the future. As always, let me know down in the comments below if you have any questions about this video. And of course, I really appreciate it if you can give me a thumbs up if you like this video. And of course, subscribe for more content like this in the future. Bye!